When you retire, you make a series of important decisions. But if you're not guided properly, maybe you're making mistakes that you don't even know that you're doing. So today, we're looking at 7 mistakes too many retires are making.
Fellow investors, bonjour. This is Mike Leroux, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast where I and my co-host Véronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement. Dividend Growth Investors, bonjour. Mike Leroux here. You're listening to the Dividend Guy podcast. And maybe today we're going to change the title Retirement Guy podcast. We're drafting a little bit outside of the investment world for today's episode, but I think a lot of you guys will enjoy. So how are you doing, Veronique?
I'm doing good, Mike. And you know what? I think that it does make sense that we talk about this topic a bit much for a few episodes because we invest to retire stress free. Like, this is the goal for many, many investors, right?
Yep.
So it's one thing to build a portfolio for retirement, but it's another to manage it once you are retired. So our two previous episodes about retirement inspired us, and we decided to keep going with the worst mistakes retirees make with their portfolio.
So before running DSR, I worked as a financial planner for 10 years. And it was shocking how many things are being said, like rule of thumbs, general like tips that most people just like agreed without even looking into anything. And then those young retirees come into my office like saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." I'm like, "Okay, so how about we run the numbers first and then we see if it was a good thing for you, because maybe your neighbors is all set but you don't have the same situation." So it's usually a case of it depends. And then people, I mean, we all love simple rules. It makes our life easier. Our brain is lazy, so it doesn't want to talk, it doesn't want to think too much. And then we just follow those rules, and sometimes it may not be the right case. So this is why we decided to go with this episode, digging a bit deeper on those things, because it's one thing to invest, but besides investing, there's a lot more to talk about when you go into retirement.
So many retirees rush to claim CPP or OAS early, often out of fear. What's the actual cost of claiming these benefits too soon?
So I guess that if we take one step back, you work all your life. So all your life, you do have a paycheck. And when you stop working, this is probably like the most like difficult part of retiring is you lose that paycheck. Like every 2 weeks, every weeks, or every month, nothing is coming in. So then when we're thinking about government benefits, we're just thinking, oh my God, I can recreate a portion of my
Mhm.
paycheck right away, get the money right now. And of course, the moment you retire, you're the youngest you could be at retirement. So you're younger, you're healthier, you have your bucket list, you want to enjoy life, and you're thinking, well, here's come free money just to save the day. So it's really tempting to take a look at that option and start withdrawing money like right the day
Mhm.
you retire. However, there is a big bonus waiting for you. So that's the first thing. The big bonus, I mean, you have like a bonus for CPP and you have a bonus for OAS. So if you start before the age of 65 to get CPP, you have like a smaller amount. So the bonus goes both ways. If you retire earlier and you want to take it at the age of 62, you're going to lose 0.6% for each month. So 7.2% per year, up
Hmm.
to the maximum of 36% lower if you start receiving CVP at the age of 60. So that has a major impact first. But then the worst part is along the way, like that income will follow you throughout your entire retirement. So if you retire at the age of 60 and you receive a small pension, well, it's going to continue to be a small pension at the age of
Mhm.
65, 70, 85. And if you live until the age of like 100, well, you have been dragging a long way with a smaller pension. The OAS works in a similar way where oh, sorry, I forgot about the bonus. If you wait and you do not take your CPP at the age of 65 and you delay the moment you get the pension, it will increase by 0.7% each month or 8.4% per year. up to a
Hmm.
maximum bonus of 42%. So that, I
Wow.
mean, 42%, it's a pretty solid pay raise. Most of us from one year to another don't see our income increasing by 8.4% for 5 years, right? It's
Right.
a pretty good deal that the government is trying to offer us. And then you wait until the age of 70, you get like 42% bonus. That's pretty solid.
Mm.
OAS is a bit less generous, but still you have another bonus of 0.6% every month. So if you wait until the age of 70, that goes up to 36% bonus. So overall, you have an easy way to get a lot more money down the road, but of course, you have to delay it. You have to find a way to compensate for like the moment between 60 and 70 where maybe you will have to work a little bit longer, maybe you will have to withdraw money from your retirement, but the
Hmm.
mistake is most people will live past the age of 85. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you're listening to this podcast, you're like 35 and you're just like, Mike, that doesn't make any sense. I don't even know if I'm going to make it to retirement. Fair enough. But the life expectancy tables will start at the age of your retirement. So if you retire at 65, this means that you didn't die from a car accident at the age of 22. You didn't die from
Hmm.
cancer at the age of 50. You are already at 65. So, statistically speaking, your odds of getting to 85, 90, 95 years old are pretty good. So,
Right.
not delaying it will create a big hole as you get older. So, that's why it's one of the, I would say, one of the major mistakes that a lot of retirees do.
So it may be worth working like part time for a few more years and delaying that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, on the other side, some wait too long without a clear strategy. So, what are the risks of delaying CPP or OAS past 65 or 70?
Well, that's always the big balance, and when you get to retirement, you will have to make a lot of decisions about like making like weighting the pros and cons of two choices, but you have to take one. So if you, of course, if you delay CPP and OAS until the age of 70 and you pass away at the age of 72, you didn't get much from the bonus,
Hmm.
and definitely that was not a smart way to do it. And the way you should see it actually is more about thinking about your health, of course, and like maybe like your family's health. Like if everyone in your family dies at the age of 70 from like a heart attack, well, maybe you want to take it earlier, but that's just like very specific case because on average the odds are on your side. But without
Hmm.
thinking about it, without having a clear strategy, you're just taking a number out of like nowhere, and that's probably like the worst way to make a decision for pretty much any financial decision in your life.
Okay, so let's go into that a bit more. The sweet spot for claiming CPP and OAS is often said to be between 65 and 70, but what personal factors should retirees consider to find their ideal timing?
Of course, we would all like to see the future and have the date or the year that we're going to pass away. That would make your life a lot easier. But when you think about it, if you die at the age of 85, for example, the sweet spot is about 67, 68 years old. So you get a part of the bonus, but if you die before 85, well then you're not that much of a winner, but if you live longer, it's a little bit better. So the balance really between also the market risk versus life expectancy. So on
Hmm.
one side, I would say like depending on the situation again, but once you pass away, you don't really care of what's happening. So maybe you want to have that based income for the rest of your life. And in the meantime, so you can delay it until the age of 70, but in the meantime, you can withdraw from your RSP, you can withdraw from your non registered or your TFSA to compensate for that part. What is interesting here is how you manage risk. When you manage your portfolio to create income, the risk is on you. So you manage the risk of inflation, you manage the risk of the market, you manage the risk of like selling in a panic mode. So your emotional risk. So you all the risk are on your shoulders. And there are a lot of things that you don't control. You don't control the inflation. You don't control if the market's going to plunge for 25%. So it makes it a little bit harder. On the other side, if you delay CPP and OAS at the age of 70, then you put all that risk into the end of the government. And then a lot of
Hmm.
people will say, oh, we're not going to get the pension anymore. And I mean, bunch of studies have been made. It's fully funded and might as well, if you don't believe all those studies, I would argue that if you compare the difference between the risk of investing in stocks versus the risk that the government is gonna like collapse and then we're gonna go into a civil war and nobody will have like home and shelters anymore. Well, I think we have like less chance that the apocalypse is gonna happen. So I would be in the camp that you should delay CPP and OAS a little bit longer. Then the clear way to make the real decision is, of course, to run different simulation. Since the beginning of this show, we've been talking about hypothesis. So you do this, you do that, maybe you live longer, maybe not. But
Right.
then if you run the scenarios, you'll see what is the impact of that decision. So what happened if I take CPP and OAS at the age of 60, 65, 67, and then 70? And then maybe the difference is $1,000 a year in your retirement budget until you pass away. So $1,000 per year is highly relevant if your retirement budget is $30,000.
Mhm.
So then thinking a little bit more about the choice where it's going to give you that extra $1,000 makes a lot more sense. But
Right.
if your retirement budget is like $80,000 a year because you have like a pension and you saved a lot of money and you have like $1 million in your RSPs, well, maybe that $1,000 doesn't make that much difference. And then maybe the best decision is just the one that makes you feel comfortable, even though
Mhm.
it's not mathematically optimized. I mean, it's not going to have a material impact in your decision. Without running different scenarios, you don't know what is the maximum you can spend, and you don't know which kind of risk you can take or not. So, depending if you are kind of like forced to invest in the stock market, trying to generate as much return as possible to have the retirement that you want, or maybe you save enough and then you don't need to rely too much on the market, and therefore it makes even more sense to have a solid base of income and then you can just enjoy life and stop worrying about whatever is going to happen with the tariffs and the commercial trade wars and whatever crisis we're going to have like in 2028 or something. So you can just enjoy life, spend the money that you need, and you know that you're not going to miss anything.
Hey, dividend growth investors, this is Vero. Mike is currently taking a sip of water, which gives us 10 seconds, and I literally mean 10 seconds to grow the podcast together. Go on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit pause, and then under our logo, you'll see two very interesting buttons. One to subscribe, hit that subscribe button now, and then give us a 5-star rating. Our goal is to help more investors just like you, so please spread the love. Thank you. Okay, Mike, I wanted to talk about retirement loop later on, but I think it really fits in because if you're like me, when Mike talked about projections and all that stuff, like different scenarios to me for the first time, I was like, okay, I want to do it. So, just so you know, we have a projection sheet tool at retirementloop.ca if you'd like to join the waitlist and maybe part of this amazing community soon. It's available. Okay, Mike, the next is a subtle yet critical mistake, and it's not treating pension and government benefits like CPP and OAS or QPP as part of their fixed income. How can it sabotage a retirement plan?
Well, in general, once you retire, you become more averse to risk because, of course, you lose the ability to add capital to your portfolio. So the only thing that you'll be thinking of when the market goes down is how in the world I'm going to live on that for the next 30 years. So by being averse to risk, you may be tempted to move away from equities and then go for safer investments such as like preferred shares, bonds, GICs, anything very stable, providing interest income, but likely not going to generate the same returns, which is totally fair. But have you thought that maybe if you have not run the right scenarios, maybe you don't know if your retirement plan can take it? So if you expect to
Mhm.
withdraw 5% of your portfolio for the rest of your life, well, you may outlive your portfolio if it's not invested the right way. So the first mistake with this is to say, "Oh, I'm going to invest in fixed income like bonds and GIC and I'm going to plan a return of like 4 or 5% yield." Because right now we're still able to make 4% yield relatively easily. However, are we that certain that we're going to be able to have bonds and GICs paying off above 4% for the next 35 years?
Mhm.
That's another topic. So, when you plan, you should go and use professional expectations. You can find them like for Canadian, for example, we have like FP Canada that is like supporting financial planners. And therefore, the expected yield will be for fixed income and bonds will be closer to like something between 2.5 and 3%.
Mhm.
And maybe at this point, your portfolio is not going to generate enough income to support your retirement. So if you forget about the fact that CPP and OAS are guaranteed and they will follow inflation, so they should be treated as a part of your fixed income. And if you're lucky enough and have a defined pension plan, it's the same thing. That money will be partially indexed, sometimes fully indexed for inflation, but most importantly, it is a stable source of income that will never die. So
Mhm.
when you look at your overall portfolio, maybe you are able to take a little bit more risks to invest a little bit more into equities. And actually, it's kind of funny because we say taking more risk, but actually, we should say taking more volatility because you're
Right.
actually reducing the risk of outliving your portfolio if you put a little bit more money into the stock market instead of like GICs in the early years of your retirement because you have considered, oh, okay, so I'm receiving like so much money from fixed source of income that I don't have to invest that much into more fixed income. The other thing that
Mhm.
you have to also consider is if you invest in like non-registered accounts, considering inflation, taxes, the GICs and the bonds paying interest, they probably are not going to be able to even live up to that 2.5% net return. It's going to probably going to be lower than this, and then it's going to be even tougher to live on the budget that you wanted to do for retirement.
Okay, so we could consider those benefits as bond like, stable, predictable, risk free, but how should retirees use them during retirement? Like, is this a great way to avoid selling shares during a down market, for example?
Yeah, actually, when you are about to retire, you should look at all your sources of income. Maybe you have like rental properties, pension, government benefits, and then you have your portfolio that will maybe generate interest, dividends, so they are easier to project. And then you could also sell shares, expecting some price appreciation within your portfolio. So the way I would approach it is to create like three buckets, literally, like so you can see where the money is coming from. So the first one would be
Hmm.
kind of like your liquidity, so your cash aside, so you're not forced to sell money to sell shares to generate money. So you have like some a cash wedge or a cash reserve on the side, and then you have like stability source of income. So you can think of like your interest, your dividend, and of course government benefits, and then your pension plan. That is kind of like creating your base income. So no matter what
Hmm.
happens in the economy, you're going to receive your government benefits, you're going to receive your pension. A good portion of the interest and a good portion of your dividend generated by your portfolio it will be relatively stable as well. So that should be your base budget. And then you have the growth part. So for some people, the growth part will be super important. Some others will go all in for fixed income. And if it works, I mean, that's not a problem. You know, when I was a financial planner, I had a client. He was in his 70s. He was a doctor, so he was still working because he just loved his job. He had a net worth of like $10 million. And then he was worried about market fluctuation. Whenever his portfolio was down like 2%, he used to call me and it's like, what's going on? Nah, nah, nah. And then at one point, I had that discussion with him and like, why do you still invest in the stock market? I mean, you obviously
Hmm.
don't need money. You like, your family is well funded, your retirement plan is well funded, and you don't even want to retire. I mean, the hospital will have to kick you out until you decide to retire. So why would you keep on adding stress to your life when you don't need to beat anyone? You don't need to beat the market. You don't need to generate 6 7% return. You could live on what you have accumulated with a 0% return. So why don't you just
Hmm.
focus on beating the inflation and protecting your capital without having that risk? So it's all about thinking as well on what do you need at retirement. And then on the other side, unfortunately, we have people that have not saved enough to live the retirement they want, or the compromise they could make is to work part-time and invest in equities to actually generate enough income and retired the way they wanted. So
Right.
this is really depending on where you are at. But if you do not try to plan it, it's going to be very hard to understand if you must invest in stocks or not. And then you looking at your stable income will be your base of whatever happens. If the market crashes and it goes down to zero, I still have those pensions coming in. So that's super important.
And related to that, number three, Retirees often hold too much cash or GICs to feel safe. So, what's the hidden cost of playing it too safe in retirement?
So when you retire, you want to go all in for stability. As I just said, like in an ideal world, if you could invest at 5% guaranteed, we would all do it. So you don't have to worry about anything. You withdraw four, you invest at five, and there you go. You live happily
Mhm.
for the next 40 years, and you don't have to like wonder about anything else. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. So we must go through 20, 30, maybe 40 years as a retiree. So going all in cash and GICs, because the market goes like up and down, and then you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna come back. And that is usually like where the problem is. If your plan allows you to go all in on cash and GICs and you still can retire on that kind of returns, that's perfect. But if you're saying, oh, right now is not the right time to invest, so I'm gonna go in cash and I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until April 2nd until we have like the more information about tariffs. Well, that didn't work that well because after that, we had the pause of like 90 days and then we're going to have like a bunch of news. And then once that is settled, when maybe the are all settled and everyone knows exactly where the tariff stands at, maybe in September, let's say for fun. Well, then in September, something else will happen. Like we'll say, oh, well, we do have a new Canadian government. I'm not too sure about them. Maybe they will change some laws or some other things will happen on the stock market. And then China will develop a new AI model that will completely obliterate the one that have been developed in the US. And they're going to take over and start growing their economy a lot faster than us. And therefore, you're going to have like more and more and more reasons to stay on the sideline. Again, if your portfolio is large enough or your retirement budget is small enough that you can live on GICs and cash, you don't have to worry about that. But on the other side, if you need to generate some returns, if you wait until the market is like super calm and everything is fine, I mean, that's a plan for your cruise, right? So you're going to have like calm water, bright and sunny shine, and it's going to be the perfect weather. That never happens with the stock market. So don't wait to get your cruise to be transformed into the stock market. That's never going to happen. And this is where it could hurt because if you enter in the market while the market is going up, you lost all the easy money. And the next time it's going to go down, you're still going to be tempted to sell when the market is going down. And therefore, you will limit your upside potential and also get some downside from the market. So it's kind of like the worst case scenario where you sell low and you buy high. That's not exactly the way it works. It should work, right?
Right. I would like to add a question here because you've mentioned that you had a client that was freaking out when his portfolio was going down like 2%. So, what should retirees expect in terms of volatility? Like, should they panic after 20%, 10%, 30%? What's the expectation should they have if they invest in equities?
That's a good question. Actually, they should ask themselves when they panic first, not
Hmm.
during like a market turmoil, but like just go back. Well, right now, maybe you feel uncertainty, but maybe in 22, where the market was down a little bit more than 10%, 2020 during March, if not 2018. So we have a lot of like recent small bear market. I call them small because they kind of like a down of like 20% or a little bit more, but then quickly recover. And this is usually where it creates a little bit more panic because we're now getting a little bit more used to see the market going down 15-20%, but within like 12 months, it's going back in full growth mode, fully recovered, and you don't have to worry about anything. But in general, a bear market will take a year and a half to 2 years to recover. And sometimes it's 3 and 4 years. So our patience as investors have not been tested since 2008. So it's been a
Hmm.
long while. A lot of people forgot. And because of that, now, whenever the market goes down by 5%, it's just like going out crazy. So the real thing is to look at your portfolio, think in percentage, and then think in dollars. And then ask yourself, when do you feel not comfortable? And based on that answer, you will have the proper asset allocation.
I mean,
Right.
if you're like all in bonds and GICs, you'll never see your portfolio going down by 20%. So it's just to say, okay, so am I okay if I have $1 million and it goes down to 80%? If I'm not okay, going all in on equities is not part of the deal. We have to find another solution. And then you will get to the right asset allocation for you. Because mathematically speaking, most of the time, if you're fully invested, the market keeps on going up over a long run. So it's going to generate higher total returns and it's going to be best for your retirement plan. But if you freak out whenever your portfolio is down by 5%, you're likely going to die from a heart attack way before you see the market recovering, which is not something we want. I want to repeat that. Retiring is not about investing and planning. It's also about, and most importantly, about enjoying life. So
Right.
you cannot
Right.
enjoy life if you freak out every time that you read the news.
Hmm.
That's kind of sounds like a nightmare for me, not a retirement. So it's really
Hmm.
about asking yourself those questions like, okay, so for how long I'm going to invest still? So the strategy will be different if you're 65 or if you're 85. And then the asset allocation will depend on that risk tolerance. It's all
Okay.
about, do I panic at minus 20 or not?
All right. So, how can investors avoid having too much cash on the side?
So most of those decisions come out of fear and uncertainty. And that totally makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like a brand new mindset, it's a brand new situation. We don't know how to attack retirement in terms of planning. So you have a lot of fears and fear come from the unknown. It's kind of like when you're young or like your younger kids, they freak out because they're convinced that there's a monster under their bed or just waiting to eat them up as soon as you close the light. So that's a fear of the unknown of what's lying under your bed while you sleep. But literally, if you just open the light and then you just look under your bed, you will see that there's no reason to be afraid. So
Right.
that's how you can solve your problem, is to stop the unknown, and it's to have a plan. I mean, it's super simple, but if you run many projections, many scenarios, what is great is then you see the impact of each of your decision. So what's the impact of my on my retirement plan for the next 30 years of going 50% bonds or 30% bonds or 80% bonds? And then you will see, oh, I can still retire, but I can lower the market risk and volatility in my portfolio. Well, there you go. I mean, again, the purpose is to enjoy life, is not necessarily to beat your neighbor's return at the end of the year. I mean, who cares? He lives his
Hmm.
life, you live yours. Everybody's happy. The point is to achieve your financial goals, not to achieve your neighbor's goals. And
Right.
therefore, having that plan, running those projections, looking at how cash flow evolves from one year to another, how each of your accounts will, of course, unfortunately, go down at one point. But if you see the mechanic behind it and you see it year by year, it's going to solve that problem of the unknown. Then you will know exactly what is going to happen in the next 3, 5, 10 years, and therefore you can make better investment decisions.
So, open the light on your retirement plan,
There you
listeners.
go.
Okay. So, the fourth mistake we'd like to address is the eternal yield debate. Why is focusing too much on the yield harmful for retirees?
So, as I said earlier, when you retire, you want to recreate income. And financial firms, they know about that. They know about that itch. It's just like, okay, so how do I just get my portfolio to work for me and generate the income I need? And therefore, they come with a long list of income focused products. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. I mean, not too long ago, we talked about the Yield Max. And one thing was for sure about Yield Max ETF is the distribution is not stable. It is
Right.
not stable. So if you're thinking I'm going to retire at like 25% yield, that's not going to happen, friend. And we saw that while the stock price decreased, the ETF price decreased, the distribution also followed. So that could
Hmm.
create other problems, and it's really hard to imagine that you're going to live on that yield. Another example that I cannot stop thinking enough, because in April of 22 I held a webinar, and it was an ask me anything, and I got like tons of question about the high yielding stock darling of the month, that was Zim integrated. You remember, right? And
Hmm.
that happened in April, because in March of 2022 Zim paid a juicy $7 of dividend per share.
That was just like, oh my God, making so much money. Like the yield was double digit. Everybody was like freaking out. And I mean, it's a marine shipping company. So you're thinking, well, we all need transportations of goods across
Right.
the ocean. Zim Integrated pays an amazing yield. You would be a fool not to invest in it. So back then the stock price was around 80, 85 bucks. So you can imagine that a 17 bucks dividend, and that is not like a yearly dividend. Like every quarter they paid a dividend. So that was like, oh my God, I'm going to be rich investing in Zim Integrated, or I'm going to get my money back so fast that it's going to be perfect. Fast forward April of 2025, so roughly 3 years after, the latest dividend paid was $3.17. So from 17 bucks, they just put the 17 to 17 cents and they had $3. And the stock price is down at $13. So from
Mm.
85 to 13, from 17 to 3. If you were thinking that you can rely on Zim dividend to keep your retirement budget, it's a big fail. So one
Mhm.
thing that you have to keep in mind is nothing is guaranteed. And I use that example because I got so many questions and I told people back then, this is how it's gonna end. It is for sure how it's going to end. And if you look at the past, marine shipping companies like Zim did exactly the same thing. Like they had a big boom, they cranked up the dividend. It was a variable dividend. People thought it was guaranteed, and then boom, they wake up with a huge hangover. You know, when you see like a 10% yield or more, it's usually just smoke. I mean, I could literally offer you right now, if you invest $100,000 with me, I'm going to give you a 10% yield for as long as maybe in 15 years, I'm going to call you and say, well, Vero, I'm sorry, but there's nothing left. But you got your 10% yield for like 15 years. That was pretty cool. But that's usually what happens. I mean, we're
Mhm.
not creating money out of thin air. So how
Right.
financial firms would do that and just say, yeah, you can get like 10%, the income is safe, you don't have to worry about anything else. And most of the time, unfortunately, they convince investors to say, oh, but don't retire on 10%. Take 5% of that and reinvest and buy more shares. But eventually it's still going down anyways. But they
Mhm.
kind of like make you think that you're going to save that money and eventually grow your portfolio. But every time that we see the market going down, those products are the first one to have problem with their distribution and problem with their value and leaving retirees with a loss of capital and a loss of income. So it's
Mhm.
really important first to really understand in what you invest. So then you are in a better position to see if it's the right product for you or not.
So then, Mike, what's the sweet spot to aim for regarding yield at retirement?
That's kind of like a tricky question. If you're thinking about the rule of thumb, most people will say, oh, if you withdraw like 4% a year from your portfolio and adjust it with inflation, you should be fine in most cases. And it's not a perfect rule. I've said that in the introduction. Rule of thumbs, not always perfect. Don't follow them blindly. While that goes along with the 4%, actually, it's better to adjust your budget accordingly. But even then, so you would be tempting to say, well, I'm going to invest at 4% yield and everything's going to work out and I'm going to be happy. Well, maybe it's going to work. Maybe it's not going to work. You know, the biggest difficulty about retirement planning is you plan for the next few decades. We're talking about
Mhm.
10, 20, 30 years, maybe 40 years. So trying to project how your portfolio is going to react to whatever crisis we're going to live in like 2035, who knows? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows, right? So it's a
Right.
lot harder to plan for so many years. And of course, again, I get that. Best case scenario, you never touch your capital, you just get the yield and you have something to give to your estate, to your children, grandchildren, or whatever. I get that it's the perfect scenario. Doesn't always work that way. I mean, some companies they do well, some others they don't do so well. Some eventually cut their dividend. We can talk about like funds and ETFs and any other types of products like Split Corp that sometimes just skip distribution altogether. So then you either stop eating for a month or you have to sell some shares. But I mean, like no money's coming in from the distribution. You have to find a solution. So instead of like going for a yield, I think it's a lot more important to than understanding what is inside your portfolio, which kind of combination of income products you've built,
how they will react in a good market, how they will react in a bad market. Are they able to keep on producing income during volatility? Because sometimes they could, sometimes they couldn't. Looking at the history is going to help you a lot. And again, it's going to change a lot in terms of yield, depending if you want to die with $0 or not. So maybe you can take a little bit more risk on that because, of course, then it would make sense. I cannot argue with someone that has like no spouse, no children, and they're just like, you know what? If my portfolio crash and burn, I still have like CPP OAS and I just don't care. And I'm just going to live on 7% withdrawal for how long as it works. Well, again, the key is to understand what you're doing and to be comfortable
Right.
with it. So if it makes sense for you, that's totally fine. You know the risk and you're happy with them. Well, there you go. You just found your plan. Again, then you will be able to enjoy retirement, maybe for not too many years, but at least you're well aware of what's going to happen to you. So that's the point.
Listeners, let's empower you in the investment world with our free dividend rockstar list, which includes stock ideas with positive dividend triangles. How does the list help investors, Mike?
Vero, we survey regularly our members and our readers, and we ask them what are their biggest struggle. And one that keeps coming back is really the buy struggle. Most investors don't know what to buy, they don't know when to buy it, and the Rockstar list will help them grow a little bit more their conviction because that list of stock will just include companies that show great financial metrics. Of course, you cannot start by picking them blindly, but it's a pretty good start to make sure that the company that you're about to read and know their business model is actually a business showing revenue growth, earnings growth, and dividend growth. The way I use it usually is I will filter it by sector to identify a sector that I want to have more exposure to, and then I just look for companies that have the strongest dividend growth model.
To download the list, enter your name and email at thedividendguyblog.com/rockstar. Again, hit pause now and go to thedividendguyblog.com/rockstar. So, Mike, this makes me think about the Canadian Retirees Guide to Income Producing Investment that we just released. This is a good way to identify which products best suit your retirement plan, right?
Yeah, so I went over 20 different income focused investment products, and my goal was to keep it simple but non biased. So I'm not taking my angle of like, oh, I'm a dividend growth investor, so all of those products are like very bad and those are okay. I'm really listing the pros, the cons, the common mistakes to avoid for
Mhm.
all of them. My goal was not to tell you what to pick, but either give you one pager telling you what is great about those products, what is bad about those products, and then you make your decision and you make the combination. Most of the time, the perfect solution for you will not be I invest everything in a GIC or in annuities or in ETF. It will be a combination of a few products. Don't get it too complicated, but go with something that will make sense for you, that will create a base of income, some liquidity, and also some growth.
Listeners, you can download our review of 20 income focused products now at thedividendguyblog.com/retirement loop. By doing so, you'll also get the invite to our upcoming public webinar on 6 retirement upgrades.
So, there are a lot of things you don't control, like overall in life, of course. But at retirement, those could be a great source of anxiety. So, what we're going to do in this webinar is we're going to focus on 6 key aspects of your retirement that you have full control. You have your hands on the wheels. And if you control those and you upgrade your retirement like this, you're going to not only be able to enjoy retirement, but be aware of what's going to come up next, which is a major improvement to a lot of retirees situation right now.
So again, thedividendguyblog.com/retirement loop. Okay, at number 5, a mistake I'm sure many didn't see coming: not spending enough. Do you believe it's related to the challenge of transitioning from an accumulation phase to a decumulation one?
Definitely. I mean, I've seen so many young retirees and even older retirees that have that reflex of keep on investing, adding capital to their portfolio. So they're literally not spending money so they can generate enough like dividend and interest or any other source of income from their portfolio to reinvest a part of it, to make their contribution to their TFSA, even if they're 75 years old. They're just like they're so minded to save money and add capital, and it's great.
Hmm.
But what I find sad about that is I had a client. She was 82 years old. And she told me, like, my ultimate dream is to go on a cruise. But she was like my nephew is going on a cruise, but now it's going to cost me $10,000 to go there. So even if it's my dream, I cannot afford that. I cannot do this. And the reality was, like, she was a judge widow with a full pension, with over $1 million in a bank, no husband, no children. And she was 82. I mean, it is so sad to see someone
Yes.
not spending money that eventually is going to go for like charity or something like that, or
Hmm.
like the classic, like, oh, I have like an old uncle that died that I never met, and then I'm receiving $1 million. Like, why would you do that? Like, you save that money, you made sacrifices, please enjoy.
Right. So how can it destroy a retirement? I guess you already answered that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not about destroying the retirement as much as not enjoying it to its fullest extent. And
Hmm.
again, not having a clear plan will kind of like put you in the original mindset of, I still need to make sacrifices and I still need to either not spend that much money or even more add capital to my portfolios. So instead, if you have that plan, you'll know what are the limits, like the upper limits, the lower limits, when it's a good moment to spend, when it's not good a moment to spend. But I mean, at the age of 82, I think it's about time that you spend money on a cruise.
Right, right. So the next mistake is not reviewing your retirement plan yearly. What surprises can it bring to retirees that don't?
So I like to say retire each year. Each year of your retirement, you should rerun all the numbers. And the idea here is, as I mentioned earlier, when you do a retirement plan, you plan for the next 30, 40 years. It's a long road. It's like when I decided to quit my job at the bank in 2017 and jump on a small RV to go all the way down to Costa Rica. That was like a 1 year trip. I did not know exactly how everything is going to happen. I had a pretty good idea. So I had a plan, right? So I had like some key places I wanted to visit, roughly ideas of how long it's going to take me to get there. But along the way, plans change. We met
Hmm.
people, we discovered other things. So if we were not constantly reviewing this itinerary to get to Costa Rica on December 1st, we would have probably got lost at one point. So it's the same thing for your retirement. You see the graph for the next 40 years. That's like a bit scary. But if you don't do anything and you're just like, oh, I'm good. And then you wait 5, 10 years, and then first life changes. And like maybe like you will have to spend more money on the roof, or you want to help your children that you did not expect that. And then if you do not consider and factor in those changes, then maybe you're gonna wake up at the age of 80 and say, "How come I have like only $100,000 left? Like, what happened
Hmm.
with my portfolio?" Or like, so it's better to take initiatives each year so you can adjust, not going crazy about the adjustment, but at least knowing what's going to happen. If you're driving 110 kilometers an hour on the highway, at one point, if you want to take an exit and you don't adjust your speed, you're going to hit the wall, or you're not going to be able to get out of the exit properly. So it's important to adjust your speed as long as you go into speed bumps and other things on the road. So you just want to make sure that you know where you go, and by adjusting it every year, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
So you kind of already stated the pros and cons of doing a yearly review, but how would you proceed to it?
Yeah, so there are a few steps, but they're pretty easy. First, if you have an advisor, you can bug him to run the numbers for you every single year. Maybe he's going to be happy, maybe not. If you have a fee only advisor, that's going to be costly. So I don't recommend doing that. I mean, and on the other side, that's not worth it if you do not have access to a projection sheet or a software. Probably that you can run the numbers every 5 years, like pay for a plan every 5 or 10 years. But the most important part, if you cannot run the numbers by yourself, is to look at the plan that you have. And then let's say you had that plan done in 2022. So we're in 2025 today. So in that plan, you should see how much you should have in your RSP, in your TFSA, how much you should have in your non-registered account, and how much you should spend. So if your numbers are pretty much on target, well, then you don't have to do anything. Of course, you don't have
Mhm.
like the perfect calculation, but if you are supposed to still have $500,000 in your RSP in 25 and you're at 510 or 600, well, that just means you had good years on the market. That's fine. You're good. If you're at 350, this is probably when you should pay for another plan to see what exactly happened and how you can adjust. So that's why
Right.
it's easier if you can run the numbers by yourself, because then you will be in control, you will know what's coming, and updating numbers doesn't take that much time. I mean, it's just updating balances everywhere and then just realizing, is was my budget from last year made sense or not? And the key is to have kind of like a flexible budget where you have like maybe one year the market went high very fast, so you could sell an extra $10,000 that doesn't change too much on your plan, and then you can spend that on a travel or do roofing or whatever. So that could change. This is one of the reasons why at Retirement Loop we have this projection sheet that we update every year, so you can actually be in control and know exactly your numbers. Like, so you don't
Mhm.
have to rely on anyone. You can update them, run again, run multiple scenarios every single year. So it makes it a lot easier to make small tweaks, small adjustments every
Right.
single year. So in 25 years down the road, you're still going to be in full control of your plan.
Mike, the last mistakes to discuss is one I truly believe is underestimated, and it is assuming retirement spending will stay flat. Of course, inflation can kill us, but also things change as we age, right?
Oh my God, that's crazy, right? I'm in my 40s right now. And if I look at my budget for the past 20 years, I mean, went from like paying for school, travels, getting promotion, running a business, and then paying for a new roof and not going on vacation that year. I'm still mad about that year, actually. And my wife was like, just, oh, Mike, that's not that bad. I mean, we can rent like a vacation property for like a week, like stay in Quebec. And I was like, yeah, okay. So if you're happy, that's good, but I'm still not happy and I'm still not content. But anyways, that's life, right? You have to adjust. I mean, of course, I cannot put $20,000 on my roof and then the same $20,000 is not available anymore for traveling.
Right.
So you have to make those kind of like decisions. And retiring is about the same way, but even more because as years pass by, you also age and the situation will change. So the classic way to see it is you have like three phase of retirement budget. You have like the go-go phase. That is like the beginning of your retirement where you're healthy, you have a bucket list. So you spend a lot more money. And this is where you can adjust your budget to say, oh, those are like the major things I want to achieve. I have the energy, I have the health, and I have the money to do it. Let's do it. As you get older, you're going to go into the slow go phase. You're going to get tired of like running around with your backpack or stuff like that. So maybe you're going to spend a little bit more time at home, just chilling, like getting new hobbies that are less costly as you're just going to phase in into a slower phase of retirement. And then you have the no-go phase when you start really say, you know what, it's time to move into a retirement home, get some health cares, and I will not go around. It's just more like about contemplating what you have done in your life and try to enjoy the last moments. So when you look at that from a retirement planning perspective, you have this way where your budget's going to go from fun money towards healthcare money. So a part of
Mhm.
it will still remain like the foundation of spending. It's not true that at the age of 80 you're going to be able to live on like $10,000 a year either, but a lot of like the money that you're going to spend at that time will be to be more comfortable, to have more services and more healthcare support. While when you're in your 60s or early 70s, you may be in full shape and then want to do so many different things that you will need that fun money.
So, how would you address retirement spending over time?
So, a good projection will include flexibility. You will have your base budget and then extra spending. Like extra spending, thinking about, okay, so maybe every 5 years I'm going to need to buy a new car. So, you have to include like that $50,000 expense in your plan. For the first 10 years, I want to travel more or I want to do this kind of activities that cost more. I enjoy going to the restaurants and I would like to go like every week. Or maybe you're gonna like go to every kind of like shows and theaters that you can possibly do for a few years. That costs a lot as well. So
Mhm.
you need that base budget plus some extra spending. And you can also look into another phase of retirement and say, okay, so around which age I will be selling my house and then moving to a senior home, which kind of fees could I expect? So by selling your house, you're going to have like
money coming in, but then it's going to cost you a few $1,000s a month to live in a senior
Right.
home with the care that you need. So those are the things that you should think of to manage your budget accordingly. Or maybe your plan is as you age is, oh, you know what? I would like to stay in my home a little bit longer. So I'm going to have a budget to do some renovation to stay there, or to have like a nurse coming every week or something like that to have support so I can still stay in my home a little bit longer. So those are the things that you can address with a financial projection, allowing that flexible budget. So you know that in 10 years from now, you could spend $100,000 extra for renovation, or to give like a large gift to your children so they can buy a house and still enjoy your retirement on your side.
In summary, listeners, I guess you have realized it by now. The solution for pretty much every mistake is to have a plan.
That would have made a very short episode. Get a plan, dude. Move on.
All right, thank you, Mike, for offering us a solution to these common mistakes at retirement. Listeners, remember to download our Canadian Retirees Guide to Income Producing Investment for our complete review of 20 income products at thedividendguyblog.com/retirement-loop. And you'll also get invited to our upcoming webinar on 6 retirement upgrades. For our show notes and related content, visit thedividendguyblog.com/226. Make sure you do not miss any episode. Hit the subscribe button underneath our podcast logo and leave us a 5-star rating. Next week, we will see how Mike would invest $1 million at retirement. Until then, stay invested.
Stay invested. Hey, fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guy Blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence, as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research, make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.